In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. From Muhammad, the messenger of God, to Heraclius, the emperor of Byzantium, greetings to him who is the follower of righteous guidance. I bid you to hear the divine call. I am the messenger of God to the people. Accept Islam for your salvation.
He speaks of a new prophet in Arabia.
Was it like this when John the Baptist came to King Herod, out of the desert, crying about salvation?
Imagine for a moment the 7th century. Two worlds are on a collision course. One is the heir to a 1,000-year-old legacy, Rome. The other, a brand new force, absolutely energized by faith, erupting from the sands of Arabia. This is the story of their very first and truly fateful encounter. Okay, let's break this down. On one side, you've got the Byzantine Empire, what we today call the Eastern Roman Empire. It's ancient, it's massive, and it's absolutely steeped in tradition. And on the other side, you've got the brand new Islamic Caliphate, a tightly knit and incredibly motivated force, all unified by a new faith. One was kind of like a weary giant, the other was a rising tide. Now, here's the thing. Before the first sword was even drawn between them, one of these empires was already deeply wounded. The Byzantines, well, they looked incredibly strong on the outside, but underneath all that armor, the foundations were starting to crack. To get a sense of just how big this giant was, look at this number. Around 17 million people. That's who lived under Byzantine rule at the turn of the 7th century. This huge population was its greatest strength, sure, but it was also a massive liability. An empire this big needs incredible resources to defend and maintain, and those resources, they were about to be stretched to their absolute breaking point. So what was the cause? Well, the culprit was this absolutely apocalyptic war with their old rival, the Sasanian Persian Empire. Emperor Heraclius had managed to pull off a victory, and he was hailed as a hero who saved the empire. But wow, it was a victory that cost them almost everything. The war had been a completely wrenching experience that drained the treasury, ruined entire provinces, and just exhausted the army. And it was into this totally exhausted landscape that a new challenge started to pop up from the south. You know, the first clashes were confusing, unexpected. The Byzantines just sort of wrote them off as another series of desert raids, a problem they'd been dealing with for centuries. Oh, they could not have been more wrong. This timeline of those first encounters, it really shows an empire that was caught completely flat-footed. The clash at Muta in 629 was like an early tremor, but it was the Battle of Diffin near Gaza in 634 that sent absolute shockwaves through the region. And you can see their response wasn't some grand strategy. No, it was reactive, improvised, and frankly, tragically ineffective. Now, what's really telling here is the reaction to that defeat at Dothan. The candidatus is slain. A candidatus wasn't just some officer. This was a member of the emperor's own personal honor guard, a man with direct access to the emperor himself. For a commander that high-ranking to be killed by what they thought were just desert raiders, well, that wasn't just a military loss. It was a stunning, psychological blow to imperial pride. Okay, so the skirmishes were over. The real test was coming. The Byzantines decided they were going to put an end to this southern threat once and for all. They gathered the main field army of the East for one final decisive battle, a battle that would become an absolute cataclysm. So the stage was set at the Yarmouk River. This was supposed to be it, the final act. Emperor Heraclius, from his headquarters in Syria, he committed the bulk of his professional forces. The goal was simple: annihilation. Drive the invaders back into the desert and restore Roman order. But here's the thing. The Byzantine army was a house divided. You had serious friction between the top generals, guys like Vahan and the emperor's own brother. The logistical system, which was hollowed out from that last war with Persia, was a complete nightmare. The army couldn't even feed itself properly in the field. And maybe the most critical mistake of all, they withheld pay from their longtime Arab allies, completely shattering their trust at the worst possible moment. The battle was basically lost before it even began. And the result? It was an absolute catastrophe. The Byzantine army didn't just lose, it completely disintegrated. Trapped against the ravines of the Yarmouk, the professional army of the East was, for all intents and purposes, wiped out. And with its destruction, the provinces of Syria and Palestine, the very heart of the Byzantine East, were lost forever. So, in the aftermath of Yarmouk, a new reality starts to set in. The old world was gone. A new frontier was being drawn, not just on a map, but in the minds of the people who actually lived through this historic upheaval. And this is where history gets really fascinating, because it's not just about what happened, but about how it's remembered. Just look at these two completely different portraits of Emperor Heraclius, the man who presided over this disaster. On the Byzantine side, court historians scrambled to protect his legacy, blaming everyone and everything else, rebellious soldiers, bad weather, you name it. But in the early Islamic tradition, a totally different picture emerges. Heraclius is seen as this wise, almost tragic figure, an emperor who recognized the truth of the new faith, but was trapped by his own people. I mean, just listen to this quote, which Islamic sources attribute to Heraclius. It captures that perspective perfectly. This isn't a portrait of a hated enemy, but of a respected adversary, who in their view, understood the magnitude of what was happening. It's a powerful reminder that history is also the story people tell themselves to make sense of a world that's been turned completely upside down. So with Syria and Egypt gone, the Byzantine Empire falls back behind its strongest natural defense, the Taurus Mountains. And for the next 300 years, this rugged mountain range would become the hard frontier between Christendom and the Islamic world, a zone of permanent, grinding warfare. But the story doesn't just end with a wall of mountains and centuries of war. The relationship that actually grew out of this initial violent clash was way more complex, a mix of conflict, diplomacy, and migration that would end up reshaping the entire world. This new order took shape in some really surprising ways. See, it wasn't just a hard border. Entire Christian Arab tribes who had been allies of Rome for a long time actually chose to migrate into what was left of the empire. And get this, Caliph Umar and Emperor Heraclius themselves reportedly started corresponding, negotiating the movement of these very peoples across the new frontier. This wasn't just a military conquest. It established a whole new world order where these two civilizations would be locked in this complex dance of rivalry and exchange for the next 1,000 years. And that really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? In the grand sweep of history, what truly defines the future when civilizations clash? Is it the shock of battle, the drawing of new borders, and the memory of who won and who lost? Or is it the slow, quiet exchange of people, ideas, and stories that always follows, creating a new world that neither side could have possibly imagined before their first violent encounter?